All right, so today we're diving deep into some fascinating stuff. We've got this excerpt from a 1973 talk, and it's by Elder LeGrand Richards, a leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Big name, big topic.
Definitely. Biblical prophecy, this idea of a messenger getting everything ready for Christ's second coming.
And you could tell right away, Elder Richards, he's really passionate about this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Super passionate, especially about missionary work. Calls it the most important thing ever. Links it directly to understanding, like, the whole point of Scripture.
So without that kind of work, we're missing the bigger picture, according to him.
That's how he sees it. It's like this foundation for his whole argument.
Okay, so he's going all in on this. What's the connection to this messenger idea?
So he brings up Malachi 3.12, the verse about a messenger preparing the way. And he's saying this messenger has to be a prophet, someone like John the Baptist was, but in our time.
Making that parallel, interesting. But then he gets even more specific, right? Connects it to the Latter-day Saints.
Exactly. Like, this is how that prophecy is fulfilled, according to him, positioning the LDS Church right there in the middle of it.
Wow. Okay, so then he goes on to give all these examples from the Bible, trying to back this up.
Yeah, this is something you see a lot with religious movements. Taking what's already there and reinterpreting it, fitting it to a new situation.
Makes sense. So what kind of examples does he use?
Oh, he pulls out some big ones, like the angel in Revelation who's preaching the everlasting gospel to everyone all over the world.
Right, and he ties that to Joseph Smith's vision, God the Father and Jesus Christ, separate beings.
Which he makes a point of saying, no other church at that time believed that, just them.
And then he talks about Moses too, right? That whole prophecy about Israel scattering, worshiping the wrong gods, but finding their way back to the true God eventually.
And boom, another connection to Joseph Smith, this time his first vision experience.
It's like he's building this whole case, piece by piece. Each example another brick in the wall.
Very strategically, too. And then there's Matthew 24.1, the part where Jesus says the gospel being preached everywhere is a sign of the end times. Well, Elder Richards uses that to basically say
that the Latter-day Saints are the ones actually doing it, fulfilling that prophecy with their missionary work.
Exactly. It's all tied together.
So we've got this biblical prophecy, this focus on missionary work, and then he brings in something else. Personal stories. Stuff from his own time as a missionary. Why do you think he does that?
Because it makes it real, Not just some theory in a book.
Humanizes it a bit.
Totally. He talks about this minister in Georgia, right? This guy privately agreed with what Elder Richards was teaching.
Really?
Yeah, but the minister was like, no way I'm preaching this to my congregation.
Wow, that's kind of sad, actually. Like he felt trapped or something.
Right, and it shows you how powerful culture is, even if you believe something in your heart sometimes.
It's hard to go against the grain.
Exactly. There's a lot at stake. It makes you wonder what it would take for someone to actually risk that, to go against what's comfortable.
Right. To stand up for something new, something different. And Elder Richards, he kind of does that too, doesn't he? Like with that story about the ministers' convention.
Oh, yeah, that one. He pulls no punches there. Comparing the Bible to a blueprint for a building.
And guess what? Only the Latter-day Saints have the blueprint that fits, according to him.
Bold statement, basically saying they've got the whole picture and everyone else is working with like half the instructions.
Definitely not holding back on the confidence there. And he even uses those Bible verses, the ones people always argue about.
Oh, absolutely. Got to address the controversial stuff.
Yeah, like John 10.16, the whole other sheep thing. I'm always impressed when someone tackles those head on.
He doesn't shy away from it at all. Uses it to bring in the Book of Mormon, actually. Says those other sheep, they're the people Christ visited in the Americas after his resurrection.
So using a verse that's open to interpretation to support another key part of LDS belief.
Yeah.
Clever.
Very. And it's not just that one. He brings up 1 Corinthians 15.29 too. Paul talking about baptism for the dead.
Another one that always gets people going.
For sure. And of course, Elder Richards connects it to the LDS practice of baptism by proxy.
Right, where a living person is baptized on behalf of someone who's passed away.
It's all about creating that unified narrative, taking these debated verses and saying, look, we've got the explanation that makes sense of it all.
And in doing so, implying that other Christian denominations, they're missing something crucial.
Exactly, like they're working with an incomplete puzzle.
And he really emphasizes this idea of restitution, not just reformation. What's the distinction there again?
Right, so reformation implies fixing something that's already there. But restitution, he's using it like Peter did after Pentecost, talking about bringing back something whole, something original.
So not about tweaking existing churches, but restoring Christ's original church. bold move.
And it underlines his whole point, right? That the
Yeah.
Latter-day Saints, they're not just one denomination among many. They're the real deal, the true inheritor of that original blueprint.
He's so certain about it, too. You can really hear that conviction in his voice.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like he's not just trying to convince you. He genuinely believes he has the truth, the complete truth. It's not just his opinion either.
It's like he sees it as divine fact. Revealed by God, no question.
Exactly. And that level of certainty, it's pretty powerful. Whether you agree with his interpretations or not, you can't help but be struck
By how deeply he holds these beliefs
Mm,
and how that shapes everything, how he sees the world, how he talks about it.
definitely. And it makes you think about belief in general, you know? Not just religious belief, but anytime someone holds something as fundamentally true.
It affects everything else, how they interpret information, their values, the choices they make.
Absolutely. It's like this lens you see the world through. And for Elder Richards, that lens is the restored gospel of Jesus Christ as taught by the Latter-day Saints.
Right. And it's not just an intellectual thing for him either. It's deeply personal. He really emphasizes that, especially when he's talking about those families who converted, right?
Totally. Like that story about the woman who said joining the church was worth more than $1 million.
He said he wouldn't trade those experiences for $1 million.
Exactly. And you get the sense he truly means it.
It's not just about having the right answers. It's about how those answers, how those beliefs make you feel. It's that personal connection.
Absolutely. It's about finding something that resonates so deeply it changes your whole perspective. And for Elder Richards, that's the restored gospel, no question.
Right, that's his lens. But it's interesting, he doesn't just leave it at that, does he? He weaves these personal stories, these emotional moments, right back into his whole argument about prophecy.
He does, and I think that's really smart. Because it makes it harder to dismiss. If it was just an intellectual argument, you could listen, you could debate, maybe even walk away unconvinced. But when you hear about people whose lives were deeply personally changed,
It hits different.
it does. It becomes harder to just brush it aside as, oh, that's just their belief. It makes you consider the power of those beliefs, the real-world impact.
And I think that's what makes this talk so fascinating, even if you're coming at it from a completely different perspective.
Totally. It's a great study in conviction, how those deeply held beliefs, they don't stay abstract. They have this ripple effect.
They shape how we see the world, how we interact with it,
Yeah.
how we talk about those beliefs with others.
Exactly. And it reminds us that when we're engaging with different viewpoints, especially those we might not immediately agree with, it's important to, I don't know, approach it with some empathy.
To try and understand where they're coming from, not just write it off.
Right, exactly. Because there's always more to it than meets the eye. There are reasons why people believe what they believe, often deeply personal ones.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this talk, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from it?
That's a good question. I think it's this. Elder Richards, he argues that only one church lines up perfectly with the Bible, that it has the only true blueprint. But what if that's not the whole story?
What if there's room for more?
Exactly. Maybe it's not about finding that single exclusive truth. Maybe it's about embracing the possibility of multiple paths, different interpretations, finding the beauty in that diversity.
It's a good thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.